Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today on the $1 Million Practice done virtually. Today is a conversation. It's not a workshop. It's mostly focused on our guest, Emily Marr Gordon. Just a quick background on her. She's based in Brookline, Mass, and she specializes in special immigrant juvenile status cases, family-based immigration, and immigration cases with criminal law components. She's been recognized by countless organizations, Boston Magazine, Super Lawyers, ABA. She speaks at countless events, is involved with the ABA Women of Legal Tech and the AILA annual conference. Emily is also the owner of Amara Innovation, which is a consulting business that helps lawyers innovate their solutions to build productive law firm cultures. And so, Emily, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here, Hugo. Hello to everybody joining us. Excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, so Emily, all of our guests are attorneys. Some of them might work in some kind of legal profession, in operations, or in some kind of like legal capacity. But I'm just curious, like, what makes up the better part of your day?
What doesn't make up the better part of my day? That's what I ask myself sometimes. What didn't I do today? So I do have staff, but I still have a touch everything philosophy when needed. It varies. Today, for example, I was getting ready to come here. Hugo had such great marketing. And so we spent a lot of time pushing out some of his posts. And so I just decided today's a marketing day. I tend to be a person who, what works for me is doing one thing and then repeating that. So I will have theme days. So today I'm going to work on some of my social media because that's the creative spirit I'm in today. Tomorrow, I plan on working on a lot of my special immigrant juvenile cases because I have a lot of cases that all are at the same step, and I need to do basically the same task for those cases. And so I try and build my days so that they make sense and they work for my work style. That may be different for other people. They may want more variation in their day, but I've learned that that's what's best for me. So sometimes it's legal work, sometimes it's billing, sometimes it's speaking to clients, sometimes it's consults, working with my staff. And then when I do need to go in person, which is rare, court, immigration interviews, I'm going to an event on Thursday night. It's an annual event for a civil rights group that I was lucky to get a ticket for. So that's kind of the mix. There's no one day that's the same as the day before, which I enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And so is this one of the reasons that you have this? I want to talk a little bit more about the consulting firm, because you're a practicing lawyer, but at the same time, part of your job or part of the career that you built is to help other lawyers with building out their own offices. So can you tell us a little bit more about, like, what is it that's most requested from these kind of clients?
I think what I think is most requested and I think is most needed and was the motivation for me to start my consulting business is being a lawyer is really hard, right? And it's not an easy profession. But I also think we have a certain skill set that is unique to this profession. And so we can solve problems. We are trained at solving problems. And I sometimes think that we are able to solve problems from our clients, but not necessarily for ourselves or for our practices, right? That we're not applying that talent to ourselves and our practices, not through our own fault. It's because lawyering takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And so I've built some systems and solutions that have allowed me to thrive and survive the pandemic and a decade of different political administrations with immigration. And so I want to share some of the solutions that I've built. So hopefully lawyers can build those systems, implement those systems, and their job is a little bit more bearable. And then individually, they can take that home. So the stress of running a practice, practicing law, and then also balancing that with your individual life, no matter what that looks like, is not easy. And I've suffered it directly. I've felt it deeply. And so some of the solutions that I've built, I would love to share with other lawyers. And that's
cool. I mean, how big is virtual staffing in that whole strategy?
I think it's huge. I really do. I think, I went remote. We used to say, virtual, well before the pandemic. And I did it to solve a problem, right? I'm in the Boston area. Rent is very high, commercial, residential. Homes are, real estate's expensive. And so I was looking at what I was paying for commercial rent and also my output, right? And I touched on in the last piece about find what works for you. And so I realized I wasn't as productive in a shared office space. And so I decided to transition to a home office while maintaining my office for mail and meeting clients. And that worked for me. I then realized over time that I could do more. I had much more flexibility and my output, which was much better, and I was happier, and I had a cost savings being remote. Fast forward that, we all know pandemic, what happened all too well, unfortunately. So that was key back then. And then to the present today, that's one thing that allows me to do all these things, right? Like I always say, I have my cositas, right? So it allows me to go to ABA Tech Show and go to conferences and speak and be here with you all today. And to find the staff that I need as frankly, we're trilingual immigration practice. I need talent who can speak 2-3 languages, speak the same language as my clients speak. And so it allows me to pull from a pool of talent that I would be limited to if I was just looking in my geographic area.
Well, what is your response to attorneys who would say, well, I deal with sensitive cases, immigration, criminal defense. I know my clients want to see me in person regularly. What do you say to that? Because I find that that's a common response, especially because I evangelize like virtual staffing as well. I work alone, right? But our whole team is like fully virtual. I get sort of the same sentiments. I'm curious, like what is your response to that?
I hear it a lot too. I just spoke on a panel. What day is it? I have no sense of time. A week and a half ago in Chicago. And it was on remote work. And I asked the group in the room how many people are meeting clients fully remotely, consults, client meetings. I think one lawyer raised their hand, which I was a little surprised by, but yet not, because I get it. I get the block and the concern, and it's valid. I'm not here to say your concerns aren't valid. I think they are, and I understand the root of it. I would say to that issue, I would bifurcate it, right? So I would separate data security from the client experience. Okay. So we can first talk about what you can do to protect your client's data. Their data, especially in today's world, and your firm's data is incredibly valuable. It's almost a form of currency, in my opinion. It's invisible currency that one day we may appreciate has a real true value that if we can't see it today, I think it will in the future. And so that's one piece. The other piece, the client isn't necessarily concerned about your back end. They're not asking you how you're reconciling your trust account unless and until there's a problem, right? So your back end, the way you're running your firm is one piece. The other piece is the client experience, how your client interfaces with you. So I'll answer that piece for now. I think I recognize, I do some criminal defense work. I represent a lot of kids, highly sensitive, highly personal issues that we're dealing with. There are times when I need to use discretion. So if a client, I have my consult tree when someone calls set up so that if somebody really wants an in-person meeting, I will review that and we'll assess if we think that's necessary. And usually it makes sense. There's a criminal issue. It's some kind of concern the client has, and it's very likely valid. And if that's what they want, I can make that accommodation. And because I'm remote, I can rent space anywhere. I just, getting around Boston is not easy. It's turned into Manhattan, and hope I didn't offend any New York lawyers. But that's how it feels. And so I just was able to custom pick an office in a section of Boston. I'm going to meet someone next week because I happen to be there, and I can make it work and fit them in right before the 4th because they have an imminent concern, and they're happy. I'm squeezing them in right before the holiday, and I'm happy because I don't have to drive an hour and a half to get around the city. So there's ways to do that when needed. But for everybody else, for the clients, maybe you're not concerned about really, sensitive criminal issues, or say if there's a domestic violence issue and there's somebody in their home and they have nowhere safe to go, and your office is the only safe place. You can create that environment, right? I'm not saying don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying be a little creative about it. But for everybody else, I would challenge that to say, can you deliver the same results, the same experience remotely, right? Maybe even better, right? Can I service my clients? Can my staff service my clients faster, better, being remote, because we have more flexibility than if I had to wait in my office, hope the client's not late, and I know I could do something else, but there are all those studies, and we all know shifting between tasks, it's not easy. So being remote allows me to have more flexibility. And I frankly think it enhances the attorney-client relationship. And clients seem to like it. I think they like it. They like the option because you're in a big city, they don't have to pay to park or deal with public transportation. If you're in a more remote area, they don't have to drive to the other side of the state to find the lawyer that resonates with them.
Yeah, that's powerful. So for those that haven't yet taken the leap to even hiring their first virtual assistant, what is typically the first virtual assistant hire that you would recommend for someone trying to make that pivot?
I think that's a great question. So I think when you're hiring any staff, but we'll talk about remote because it's a little harder, a lot. I vacillate on this because I don't have a lot of in-person experience with staff, but I think you want to go a little slower than maybe you would if you were in a traditional office and you already had staff who would keep an eye on somebody and say, sit right here next to me and watch what I do all day, right? You have to think about the environment you're operating in, and have a certain pace that's appropriate. So I would say, and I'm going to couple in this concern about data security, client experience, go slowly, right? Integrate somebody slowly into your firm. So I like to tell stories. My first touch point really with a virtual assistant, it wasn't a virtual assistant per se, but it was a virtual answering service, right? Was because I was answering my own phones. It was early when I started, maybe 2015, 16, first 2-3 years of my practice. And I used to do a lot of detained work. And so I'd have to drive to the detention centers. It was a long drive. And I was leaving a detention center 9:00 at night. And I returned my own calls. And I always tried to return them quickly. And someone called me. And I was clearly tired. End of a long day. We've all been there more times than we'd like to remember. And I'm sure. And I think to the client, I wasn't too friendly. And that's where I got my one, knock on wood, my first and one bad Google review that I've ever gotten. And I have a philosophy that as much as it stings, and it really was, I was upset. But I then say, when it stings, you're not going to make it go away. If you can, great. But if you can't, what can you learn from it? And I realized I should not be answering my phones. Now we can talk about productivity and practice at the top of your license. That's important. But let's make that all go away for a minute. Why shouldn't I answer my phones? Well, because I cannot guarantee a great result every single time. Because if I'm leaving a jail at 9:00 at night, I'm a human. I'm not fresh. And so I may not be as friendly as I would be right now with you all. So let me hire somebody whose job it is to deliver customer service. That's their
Right.
job, and they're good at that. And so I'd say to you, identify what maybe you don't like to do, you're not
Mm.
great at, and find somebody who specializes in that. If it's answering phones, drafting emails, marketing, just pick one thing. And
Yeah.
maybe if you're concerned about, as you know, I think we all should be, liability and setting up, and this is, you're just starting to trickle into this world, don't pick the drafting motions you're going to have to file the next day, right? But pick some light work that you also don't want to do, and maybe you're not great at. I think answering phones and light communication with clients is a great one. And then find someone who's really good at that and passionate about that, and then help inspire them to deliver that service. And then you'll start seeing the effects. And the good news is, I think if you have a great experience that first time and you're realistic, that experience is going to inspire you to lean into this world a little bit
Right.
more.
And so like, what are your thoughts on like executive assistants to take on that role too, aside from like a third party call center?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I have one. She was a legal assistant, promoted this year to a paralegal. But
Awesome.
I always think of all the little things I have to do in my day, whether, in person, or that aren't legal specific. And maybe I should hire someone that just does that. And so that's actually something I've been thinking about lately. But think of all the things you have to do all day that you don't need a legal degree for. So if you're traveling to conferences, booking flights, right?
Yeah.
I will give her my parameters and she will figure out the flights that make sense. And the beauty of it is she eventually knows, her institutional knowledge grows. So yes, in the beginning, may it one for one cost you the same time as doing a kayak.com search? Possibly. But eventually your executive assistant's going to learn Emily loves Delta. Emily does not Emily likes direct flights. Like, I am not going to put Emily through Atlanta, because then, and so they learn that, like, she now knows the time of day I like to fly, how I feel about my budget. And so now I can just say, find me flights, and here's the email with the conference dates, and boom. Right. And so think of the things, whether it's travel, even in your own life, outside of your law practice, that could free you up to focus on your business and focus on being a lawyer.
Absolutely. I feel like the executive assistant is a superpower, and it's not spoken of enough. Like, I know, we run completely different businesses, but a law firm, a marketing company is fundamentally a business, no matter how you skin that cat, right? And it's funny that you don't hear, I actually don't hear too many solo practitioners hire executive assistants often enough. And it seems to be the low-hanging fruit for what you just said. It's like, it's not just travel or administrative tasks, but it's also like remote ordering your groceries and getting them delivered.
Yeah.
It's making sure that that someone's auditing your calendar every day for non-double bookings, for having a second set of eyes for any marketing collateral going out. Can't say how many times my executive assistant has caught me from making so many mistakes in the past. And that's like a superpower. And so I feel like that's like level one, right? Like getting those third-party vendors or an executive assistant. Where have you seen yourself or your clients in the consulting side? Where is that? What's the move, or what's the team that they need to make up virtually in order to really solidify this idea that there's never going to be an office practice, an in-office practice ever again? Like, what does that team look like? The most lean, and I know that varies from practice areas, but just generally speaking, in your line of work or in the most common cases with your consulting clients, what do their teams look like? Their virtual teams look like? What are the positions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think envisioning your team is very important. I have to say, you found one of my favorite terms, Hugo, which is superpower, right? You're very good, because I wrote about that a little bit ago. It was one of my first entrees into this area. So I love that term. And I think, let's use it, right? So it's not just about finding your superpower as a lawyer. When you're building your team, what's their superpower, right? So figure out how you're going to divide up your team, and then how you're going to build that team. So you're recognizing their skills. I think a lot of times we have a mentality of they're a good employee, they're a bad employee, they don't care, they do care, they're loyal, they're not loyal. There are outliers always. I always say this, there's always outliers, but let's instead say, what's the superpower you need? What's the problem you need to solve? And what's the superpower that's needed? And then find the person to fit that role. So just to say, for an example, not all employees are going to be great at reading and writing. Reading and writing may not be their greatest gift, but they may have excellent emotional intelligence. So that person should probably be your customer service person. They should be speaking to clients. They should be messaging clients, right? If you have somebody who maybe isn't the friendliest person, at least, or is a little timid with talking to clients, and that they tell you that, listen to what your team is telling you, right? If they're saying to you, this is not what I'm comfortable with, or they're bilingual and they say to you, I hear this a lot, my English isn't great. And then I pause and say, your English is better than most people who speak as a native language, right? Lift them up, make them feel good, but also realize that that's an insecurity they have. And I try and help my team members build confidence. That's something that's very important to me as a leader, because I want to convince them that actually, because it's true, their English is very good, but they're not comfortable right now with that. So they have a new job, new boss. They want to make everybody happy. They want to do a good job. Set them up for success. Okay. So hear them when they say, this is something I don't think I'm good at, or I'm nervous about. Don't set them up for failure. But remember, my goal is next year, this time, you're not going to say that anymore. Right? Not because I told you, because you believe in your core that you are smart and you are very good at, and then give the list, but give them a task that they are naturally comfortable with, and then introduce them. So I think for, say, an immigration practice, having someone talking to clients, whether you have that person answering phones or you outsource that to virtual receptionists for first touch, have somebody, they're dedicated to what I like to call second touch, and then have someone who's doing that deeper communication, right? The person's already a client and they need to talk about some more details of their case. You then could have somebody on the back end who's pushing out forms, motions, going through evidence. And then you could have, as Hugo mentioned, which I think is great, an executive assistant. Then think of it like a Venn diagram. Humans are humans, right? And humans get sick, or humans don't always perform at peak levels. I just had this come up today. One of my paralegals emailed me early and said she wasn't feeling well. And, I gave her some deadlines, but they were just project deadlines, not like immigration set deadlines. And she said, well, I'm going to work today because I have deadlines. And she said, I'm going to work today. I think I'm feeling better. And I said, are you feeling better, or are you worried about your deadlines? She said, well, I'm worried about my deadlines. And I said, you always worry about yourself first. I want you better. And in the back of my mind, I said, first of all, those deadlines are just, they're goals. If they were a real deadline, appeals deadline, immigration deadline, I've trained my staff so that somebody else could pick up that weight. So even though she may be the primary on that case, there's a secondary. So try and have a backup plan so that someone else can take over when your primary is being a human, right? And needs some relief.
That's great. So what do you think? Have you estimated the comparable savings that you have with this model versus, leasing some real estate, hiring people in-house? Have you done the math on that?
No, I've never. Let me walk over here and pull up. I'm just kidding. All my little toys I've been able to buy, my iPad and I'm kidding. No, I haven't. I haven't done then I'd be a real business owner if I sat and did the actual, but I have thought. So basically I've thought about it conceptually. And so I've thought about its savings, but I don't look at it just as savings. I look at
Mm-hmm.
it as reinvestment. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of allocating money, so I may not be saving. I don't want to sit here and sell you a dream that I'm, doing the 12-hour work week and I'm saving all this money and, driving a Porsche 911, right? Like it's the opposite. I don't want to sell you this whole image. It's possible. I mean,
Right.
do it, go for it. But the way I look at it is you reinvest in the business. And that's at
Mm.
least where I am right now because it's intentional for me. I think we're at a pivotal point in the legal industry. And I'll just put a pin there because we'll all be here for another 90 minutes if I open up that door, unless Hugo wants me to. But I think we're at a pivotal point. And so I've built the foundation, I've built the house, I've started gutting the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm really putting those finishing touches on it because I think now is going to be the time where those little finishing touches that you may normally overlook will really help you stand out. And so I take the money I save on physical real estate and I'm
Mm-hmm.
reinvesting that into software.
Mm.
I'm reinvesting that into staff. I have a decent budget going towards software because my software is my other assistant, right?
Got it.
And so I do think there's a large savings. I don't think I would be able to innovate and practice the way I do if I had a traditional brick and mortar because I wouldn't have the budget to invest in software and staff in the way that I currently do.
Got it. So is where so if you were to rank top 3 reinvestments that you're making as the owner of virtual staff or virtual firm, like what are those top 3?
Software. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's licenses or for me, I just went through a huge tech stack revamp last year, this time around March 2023.
Yeah.
And so what I'm using is I didn't build the software, it's pre-existing, but it's a custom tech stack, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm spending a little bit more because all of my solutions I think are best in industry for me, but they don't all necessarily like each other yet. They sometimes
Can you recap like what that stack looks like? Like what is the most used software by yourself or your team?
It's always I have favorites depending on the day. And this is what I do spend a lot of time thinking about. So I would say, so my 3 top ones are Monday.com for project management, Front, which is a CRM email manager. You can use it for a lot of different things depending on how you want to build out integrations. Some are free, some are paid. Right now, I was using it for texting for a little while. We're mostly using it for email with a Monday integration, but there's so much you can do with it. And then the third piece, which usually is my favorite, is something called PandaDoc, which if you Google it, it's document automation software, but I built it so that it does much more than just document automation. And it's cut down. I built a solution and a framework that cuts down on a lot of our client communications. So we have less touch points, but the clients are still getting the work that they paid for and signed up for. And so everyone's as happy, if not happier, but our touch point has gone down because of the software.
I'm just curious, do you have any like software engineering background or did you just figure this all out on your own?
No, I like to solve problems.
Yeah.
I like to save money. I hate inefficiencies. And I love being a lawyer. I grew up around it. I grew up, my dad was in practice. He's in practice with me now. He may be watching today. Hi, Dad. But I grew up around lawyers. They were my world and they still are. And I believe in lawyers in the legal industry, but whether it was, what I've just witnessed before being a lawyer in law school and working for lawyers, is I've seen the suffering and the stress. And I just wish we could live better and not have to sacrifice the product we're delivering. So that really inspired me. And I've just always loved technology. It's fun for me. And so It was a way for me to solve this problem. And it was a way for me to be able to keep practicing. I opened a practice, I was in my 20s, and I knew I had a very long road and I didn't want to burn out. And so this was my solution so that I could keep going and keep doing what I love and hopefully keep smiling and be profitable, and to still deliver A+ results. And look back hopefully in 20, 30 years and say, I'm happy with my career choice. And there's some days I don't say that. I mean, again, I don't want to sell you all flowers and roses, but if I didn't build what I've built, which works for me in my practice, I think I probably would have walked away, not yesterday, we're talking years ago, or I'd be very, very, very unhappy. And so far it's working. But I'm still, like I said, I'm still putting those little finishing touches on my kitchen and, picking out what kind of bathtub is going to go in the master, the primary bathroom. I'm doing all those pieces.
Right.
So stay tuned, and I'm here with you all figuring it out. But that's what inspired me to use tech to help us practice better.
But with the tech, there's still like the staff component, right? It's like the supporting function of all the software. So where do you find the best talent? Like, what are the sources where you found good hires?
Yeah, I've had a lot of luck on Upwork. They've really been great. I've recently I had a lovely woman from Brazil who's with me for years, and we have a lot of Brazilian clients who I love, and she was just wonderful. And she was originally an interpreter and then turned into a paralegal for my SIJ kids. And she got a great job, and that she couldn't do both. And so I, in a pinch, needed to find somebody because I have all these SIJ kids from Brazil, and I didn't want there to be any disruption in the representation. So I got her email where she said, Emily, it's official. We knew it was coming for months, but it was she got word that it was final with her new job. And so it was congratulations. And the next thing I did at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I'm an early riser, is I put a post up, and a couple people responded, and I was only going to hire one person. I hired two, and it's working out great. And I like the flexibility. I think it's a combination of I do have someone who's works set hours. I know her hours. If she needs to take time off or needs to change her hours, she lets me know. We're very close. She's kind of an extension of my brain at this point. And then, so I need someone for set hours, but what I've hired them for is, they have projects and deadlines. And so they get the work done. They're paralegals, but in their country, they're lawyers, which is, I think, very impressive, and I support them, but they enjoy U.S. immigration law. And I love it. They're fully bilingual. And my clients relate to them. They're smart as heck, and they're friendly, and, they're tech savvy. And so it works for us. Maybe if you have somebody, we talked about superpowers, you have someone who's a great team member, right? Like they could put together motions for a criminal case very quickly or go through discovery, but they're not great at technology. Find a solution that works for them.
Right.
Maybe you need to be in person with them a little bit or get them some office space, and that's okay. But if I wouldn't let that necessarily be a barrier to your hiring, you just have to be creative and make accommodations for people so that you're highlighting their strengths, and not making them feel uncomfortable about at least their perceived weaknesses.
I like the international aspect. What percentage of your staff is outside the U.S.?
Everyone except me.
Okay, good to know. And so we have a Q&A.
Yeah.
People are asking a few questions. And this one's related to the international aspect here. What is your approach to reach data security when managing several software for different aspects of the business?
And what was that second word for data security?
Yeah. So what is your approach to reach data security when
Reach data
managing several different software applications for different sides of your business?
So when we started, I talked about bifurcating this. So I'm going to talk about that first piece, which is looking at the software. And if I'm not answering your question, please let me know. You want to, encryption's important. So there's the software, there's the environment you're working in, the internet, or you want a plane where someone can read what you're writing, right? And then there's the humans liability, right? Or their awareness of data security, and then their device, right? So I think there's a couple touch points here. But in terms of software, I vetted the companies I use. You want them encrypted. Words I like, I mean, this is pretty standard today, encryption. I like to see that they're either HIPAA compliant or they're able to be HIPAA compliant. Why? I don't need to be HIPAA compliant. I'm not dealing, with medical records. If I'm wrong, someone let me know. But why do I like that? Well, my understanding is HIPAA's pretty high up there. So if they are either HIPAA compliant or they have the capability of being HIPAA compliant, that tells me that they're pretty, like if it's good enough for a doctor in medical records, it's good enough for me, in my opinion. And conversely, if for some reason I needed to be HIPAA compliant, if I wake up tomorrow and decide to be a tort lawyer, it's not happening. But, I don't have to switch software. I don't have to sell my house and move. I just have to upgrade my plan. They already have it there for me, right? It's a swap out. So those are things that I look for. Also, this is not foolproof, but if it's good enough for Amazon, Uber, they have like the top computer engineers in the country working for them. They're pretty concerned about data security. I would think it's probably good enough for me, right? Because that's a high standard of security as far as, again, I don't have a computer science background, but I'm doing the best with my assessment. Also, if you want to get really deep, and I do think this is important, it's probably a topic for another day, but terms of service, right? And when I was starting out, people would say, read the terms of service. I'd be like, are you kidding me? You want me to find time to read the terms of service? I don't even understand half of that. So I get it. So maybe the beauty of 2024 is we have ChatGPT. So that's a good thing to have your friend ChatGPT do and be like, hey, what are the terms of service for Monday.com? Do they own my data or do I? Doesn't mean ChatGPT is right, but it's a lot better than not looking into it. So knowing the prompts to ask, whether it's someone else or AI or your assistant, who maybe was a computer engineer in a past life, those are important. Like, who owns your data? What happens when you leave? How are you going to migrate your data, right? What's the cost to migrate? These are, I would say to you, before, you don't necessarily need the answers. You need to ask the right questions. If you have the right questions, you can get to the right answers.
Yeah. So I love that kind of threshold that if it's HIPAA compliant, it's good enough. It's because there's likely no other higher standard of compliance for data integrity and security. And there was a follow-up to that. What were the platforms that you used? Monday for project management, Front, and what was the other one that you'd mentioned?
PandaDoc.
PandaDoc.
So yes, PandaDoc, not the zoo, the software.
Yeah.
And they have, like I said, they have other features. They have a new rooms feature. It may still be in beta. I've had it since it came out. I love it. It's like a client portal. And I'm actually, for my 2 paralegals I just hired, again, ease them in slowly. I'm not putting them on Monday. Monday's fairly complex, right? And so for right now, we're using, PandaDoc has a task feature, which I'm mostly, think of the front office, the back office. I'm using that for front office with my clients, right? But for them, I'm also using it because it's easy. I don't have to pay for another license, and I'm easing them into my practice. I also do not, I think this is important. When you hire someone new, if you just met somebody and you think they're the greatest person in the world, that's wonderful. are you going to give them keys to your house after the first day you meet them? You could be like, this person is my long lost best friend. I know in this moment, I'm going to marry this person, or we're going to be best friends. You just hit it off. No matter how great you feel about the person or think about the person in the first month of knowing them. I'm using a house analogy today. Sometimes it's medical. Sometimes I use the fashion industry. Today I'm talking about real estate. So are you going to give them keys to your house? No, not right away. Right. And there's some things you're never going to give someone. Like, you're not going to have access to my bank accounts. Are you kidding me? So same thing. When you're hiring somebody, maybe put them on a piece of your software. They don't have full access to your whole law practice at first. It's not personal. I actually tell them I'm doing this, right? I'm saying I'm easing you in for data security reasons, and also so that they're not overwhelmed with all this tech. The last thing that I use, well, I use a lot of things, but I recently just switched VoIP providers. So I'm now using, I've almost used them all. I'm now using Dialpad, which I really like. Dialpad. It wasn't a choice. I had some issues with my texting. If any of you are suffering with verification for texting, call me. I can maybe help you. It's it's really, really tough. And it's a struggle. And so I had a tough time. I say maybe because I think some of the tech companies are even struggling with it, with the new rules, but I had to leave that company. I didn't like how they handled it. So I went to Dialpad, and that's allowed me now. We text through Dialpad. And so that's why we're not texting through Front anymore, because we're using Dialpad. And I really like all the features of Dialpad. The last thing I'll say on that is, if you say to me, well, Emily, you text and there's email and there's client portals, there's all this stuff. Well, think about, do you need all this stuff? Right. So we recently cut down on texting as much. I'm being much more intentional about being able to recreate a file and produce communications and being clear about communications in writing. And so we are using texting mostly for, we just sent you an email, please check your email, right? Because now that we're in Dialpad, it's much harder for me to save the message and put that in the file. We have to physically PDF it, and it's not fun. So I do not want substantive legal advice or substantive conversations in texting, at least the platform I'm using. Why am I telling you this? What I'm saying is, if it feels overwhelming, or you're feeling like, I just don't want to have all these access points to my practice, you can still have them. So the consumer, you're meeting the consumer where they are, but you can still do 90% of your work in the platform of your choosing, while just pinging the consumer in the method that works for them, whether that's WhatsApp, which I'm not necessarily endorsing, but WhatsApp, texting, email, and then you can do a majority in your work in the platform that works for you and your team.
I'm glad you mentioned the Dialpad, because it's Dialpad. Is that right?
Dialpad, yes.
Yeah, and so someone literally just asked what phone softwares do you use, and are they easy to use by your VAs internationally? It sounds like you have the solution for your teams, which is great. Awesome. So I know we're just about at time, and I just want to remind anyone here that if you want to replay to this, we're going to send out an email with the replay link, and also for those that hadn't registered, scores of them. We'll be able to see this through social media and YouTube. So there will be a public replay link. But Emily, I know we've talked a lot about your practice, but just for a few minutes, can we talk a little bit more about the consulting side?
Sure.
Where you help attorneys directly? How can they find you for that service?
Yeah, so you can email me. So Emily@amaralaw.com. Any of those, I'll tell you a secret. If you find variations of my email, don't worry. They all get to me.
Okay.
I have multiple aliases set up and rules, and so don't worry. I can see my paralegal's inbox using Front like this, so I will get it. So if you see an Amara Law email, it comes to me. LinkedIn, I'm a pretty big fan of LinkedIn. And I'm sometimes I'm in Instagram, but that's kind of I do it for the cool kids. But LinkedIn and email are the best. Yes. Great. I'd love to talk to you.
And what are the top like solutions that you offer to attorneys looking to refine their processes or build them out? Like, what if someone watching wants to reach out to you? What is it likely that they're interfacing with?
Well, and there's one more thing I left out, which I can also use to answer your question, which is, for example, my consulting website, amarainnovation.com. You can, let's say you say like, Emily, Hugo, I saw you did something, a webinar recently I was just watching where you talked about the importance of content, right? And so I loved that. And so let's say you watch this video and you're like, I don't need to talk to Emily anymore. I just want to book with her. Like, cut out all the stuff. Same with clients. You're going to put out content so your clients get to know you. They can watch when they want to watch. And you don't have to be there live talking to them. And then they're ready to book a consult with you. They're ready to hire with you. I have on my website, you can just go in and automatically pick your time through Acuity. On my website, I'm using Acuity for my consulting side, and pick your time, pay the fee, and you're ready to go. And you don't have to worry about how much is it, how long will it be, can you confirm these times? So that's an example of things that I can help with. How do we streamline your practice so that you don't have to spend so much time being bogged down with some of these administrative tasks that can be automated, that can be outsourced? And by outsourced, I'm even meaning outside yourself, right? So that you can take the human, you can take yourself out of the picture as much as possible, unless your law license is required, or you want to do something, or the client really needs something, so that you don't have to be as bogged down with these day-to-day tasks, and you can focus more on turning a profit, doing the things we all went to law school for, which was not, are you available at 1 or 4 on Thursday? Okay, let me get back to you. Like why did we pay all this money to go to law school and read 100 pages? I'm like thinking about it, right? We didn't go through all of that to have to worry about, but I get it. I get it as somebody who's small solo firm, I get it. It's not easy. And the temptation to just say, I want to help this client right now. I don't have time to build systems. I don't have time to think of my vision, right? I always talk about the future-proof your practice. I don't have time to worry about these things because I have to respond to 15 interrogatories by tomorrow, right? Like, I can think about that for you. I want to think about, how do we turn more profit? How do we future-proof your practice? For some practice areas, this whole AI emergence, I forget the right term, but the deregulation of law, particularly in the West, that's going on, it's affecting immigration.
Oh, looks like we lost Emily. Okay, so yeah, looks like her connection was lost. That's such a bummer because that was such a great moment right there. It looks like she might be back. No, it doesn't look like it. Well, no, it's I'm sure we'll share her parting words with everyone on the call notes, or rather webinar notes email. I just want to thank everyone for showing up today, and just some key takeaways here. I mean, this was a fantastic conversation with Emily. I just said this in order. It's find out the things that you don't know how to do or that you don't want to do. Find hires for these particular roles, whether they're part-time or full-time equivalents. Upwork, she has had a lot of success in. I personally had a lot of success in hiring from Upwork and comparable hiring networks. Okay, and have supporting software functions for your organization. Make sure that you have a tech stack that's easy for entry level all the way to some more advanced users. Oh, Emily's back. There she is. Thanks for hopping on again, Emily. Seems like you had a connection issue, but I was just
yeah, sorry about that. That doesn't ever happen, but no time like live time for it to happen. So here we are. Tech doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, it's seriously, right? I mean, it's the risks of virtual, and it happens if it's rare. But those are the takeaways from today's program. But Emily, thanks so much for hopping on today. It was great talking to you. I hope you can come back. I have an idea for another a session that could involve others that are in similar lines of work. Hopefully you'll join us again. But thanks so much for hopping on.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks to you and your team. I've been a long time fan and follower of yours, Hugo, and I think what you're doing is very innovative. So I applaud you for your work, and it's an honor to be here, and happy to talk to your community and with you as well. So thank you so much, and your awesome team for helping me get here. It took a village. It's never it's never just one person. So I'm applauding both of our assistants for all their hard work. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, with that said, thanks to the Obligados Now marketing team for producing this and making sure all the tech works and that everyone's schedule's aligned. We're just another clear example of what it means to have a really awesome virtual staff as well, outside of the legal vertical. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day, and look out for those emails for the replay links. Thanks so much, Emily.